That's what you do. You buy these players that cost money and make a difference in it. But we never do that.
Never complains, gets up, gets on with a smile on his face.
They just want you to sit in the chair and go, hip hip hooray, for the Western press and the Western narrative, regurgitating the same old, every single day, without books. If you haven't seen it before, please watch the first two episodes, the second season.
We are on the site of the castle.
And it was the first time the Beatles had really stopped being semi-professional almost.
Look at that. Absolutely fascinating. Look at that, what's happened. Oh, look at it. Good evening, everyone. It's what a day. I was up at the doctor's and then I was back down, sitting by the bench shed. Yeah, Frank was sitting by the bench shed with all the flies and ants and ladybirds and wasps and bees and everything else that flies around. Anyway, so it was all right. It was a quiet day. Always have a quiet day. So anyway, I just have to thank these wonderful people. And it's Gap Painting Services. And Gap Painting Services is ideal. They're an ideal bunch of lads who come in, do a great job, first class. Everybody says first class jobs they do, fully insured, fully time served, so they know what they're doing and don't struggle. If you're an NHS worker, all the better, because you get a great discount. If you're an elderly person, you'd also get a great discount, even if you don't fit into one of those categories. They're very reasonable. They really are. Please don't struggle. I keep saying that. Don't struggle to get local ladders and whatever, because these lads just go in, do the job, and you'll be delighted with the job they do. That's all I can say about them. And there's the phone number there. And you'll be able to get it later on as well. And that's Gap Painting Services, the sponsors of the Frank Carlyle podcasts, every one of them, every single one of them. And it's thanks to them we're going. Also tonight, do you know what? I always forget about this. Always. What I'd love to do is this. Hang on a sec. One day for you. And look at the title. Why They Sank Her. Why They Sank Her. I'd love to do that. Take time. Think of the title. Why They Sank Her. So think about that. If you ever want it done. But tonight I'm going to do the gunpowder plot. 1605 gunpowder plot. And what a plot it was. And I'm going to bring in my lovely friend, the one and only we always chat, you know, and the conversations we have, it's great. It's great. And before I start on the gunpowder plot, I've got to read something out, and I hope you don't mind. I have to look for it, and I think there'll be a reason why I'm going to do this. It's not about the gunpowder plot, by the way. It'll be later. I'll tell you what. I'll do it at break. I'll do it at break. What I want to do. Then I'm going to ask you, if you like it, do you want more of it? Anthony and myself. Because we were discussing it, Anthony. And it was great. And I don't want him to come on and bless us out. Oh, yeah, I don't want him to do it. I know we won't like. So if we wait till around the break time, I'll get it. Because as I said, I was out at the time and I just wanted to get out by the bench here. Try and get some vitamin D. Then I came back. Then I have Francine here and I had to do some shopping, if you know what I mean. But anyway, we're here and we'll just carry on with the gunpowder plot. But that break, I just hope that he's like what Anthony and myself are talking about, because we always talk about it. And you do as well. I know you do. Especially Simon. If he's with us. And I'm going to bring him in now. And there's our friend, Anthony. Hey, Anthony.
I'm saying nothing.
Saying nothing. But as we were talking the other night, even Jason, he said that'd be great, didn't he?
Yeah. Well, that's always a big tester, isn't it? We run something, Jason, and Jason okays it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Especially that, you know, because he said that's a great idea. Because we always talk about things, don't we? We always talk about, and it always aims at that. What I'll be talking about later on.
Well, kind of, it all knits in with our historic journey, doesn't it?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Without the foresight to write some things down, we wouldn't know about our historic journey.
No, we wouldn't. We wouldn't. And I think the people, you know, when we start, talking about it, and if they want it, they will see that the path, the history is on with this subject matter, if you know what I mean.
And certainly in this particular zone you're going to take us to tonight. Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and that's what it's all about tonight. So you've got to ask yourself, like, what was the gunpowder plot all about?
Yeah.
What was it all about? And it was all about the persecution after the Reformation and the stealing of land from the Catholics. The country was Catholic.
Yeah.
And then these people, you know, in the higher echelons of society, that's amazing, isn't it? You know, these elite people. Well, they seen an opportunity, especially the courtiers of Henry VIII, and they seen an opportunity to take land. So they became protesters along with Henry. And then the encouragement of not the Church of Rome, but the Church of England.
Yeah.
So they decided, yeah, okay, we'll have some of that. And what they were doing, they were going around confiscating land. And it reminds me of today, actually, and I'll tell you for why. It's parallel to today um, with Donald Trump. Now, Donald Trump hasn't got a leverage on anything. So what he uses, because of the dollar, he uses sanctions.
Yeah.
So people might think, well, where's he going with this? But you'll understand. Now in Brazil, there's the BRICS meeting going on. All these other countries that have joined BRICS, and he's just come out and said, "I'm going to hit them with sanctions, Brazil, and tariffs." So that's the jealousy coming out.
Yeah.
Of Trump. He's got nothing. Trump has got nothing. Anyway, so getting back to the gunpowder plot, and these people who've seen an opportunity to land grab, and that's what they were doing. They were land grabbing. And the more lands you had, and back in the day, the more power you had. The more power you had. And this is what was going on with the protesters. And as you know, after a while, it became elongated to Protestant. Protestant. You see what I mean? Protestant. So they became these protesters against Rome. But, as I said, they subjugated the Catholics who were Catholics, into no education for you. That's one thing. No education. Then they announced that young children, if you've got children, must go to Protestant services. Must go. If not, you'll be fined. And sometimes death, the threat of death. And that's the way it was going on. That's the way it was going on. Priests were rounded up and just executed. And there was bounties on priests as well. So if I was just walking down the street or wherever, seeing a priest and run over and killed him, I'd get a bounty. I'd get a reward. And that's what was going on at the time. And also where you're at, even like it always reminds me of the Second World War. Like the 30s, before the Second World War, but the 30s, when people were saying they're Jews over there and telling the SS,
yeah,
they're Jews down that street. I know where Jews live. I'd take us there. Where do they live? So they bring them to the houses. And that's when they were going in, where these Jews were living. The likes of Anne Frank, for example.
Yeah.
The most famous one.
Yeah.
So this is what it was like back in England. It was shocking.
That was kind of what built up the hatred towards the Irish, wasn't it?
Oh.
Because the Irish were predominantly Catholic.
Absolutely. So, but it's even like, you've got 1566 with the Irish. So they went over there. But they went over there, a fellow by the name of Sir Humphrey Gilbert. He decided to go over in 1566 because you always have to have a motive, to go anywhere or to do anything. You had to have a reason. You just couldn't do it.
Yeah.
And the reason was that the Spanish, who were very successful journeymen, shall I say, and very successful sailors, got to the Americas. And Humphrey Gilbert, he said to the Elizabethan court, listen, this is awful, because they're teaching over there to the native. Now, they've never seen a native in their lives. Because believe it or not, we were terrible sailors until the likes of Drake came along and his ilk. So anyway, he went over there to Ireland as an experiment to see how the native, the country and indigenous native of that country would react to violence and to change their way of living, their culture, change their culture completely, but most importantly, the religion. So that was that, right? And that was in 1566. So, and this is while the Catholics were being persecuted in this country. And it was shocking. It really was shocking. There are people, excuse me, there are people that look at these, the Reformation and just know the word Reformation and nothing behind it, nothing what was going on. Nothing at all. And they know about the gunpowder plot. They just know. You just know about it. Oh, yeah, Guy Fawkes. That's all they know. Oh, yeah, Guy Fawkes.
Yeah.
And, so you've got to have why these plotters organised. Where did they organise? Why did they organise? Who were these people? Now, the likes of everybody knows Guido Fawkes, Guy Fawkes from York.
Yeah.
He was a Yorkshireman, but he was also a soldier of fortune. People don't realise that. He was a. Do you know the way? People are today with a gun, a marksman?
Yeah.
He was the equivalent of a marksman with a sword. And I'll go back to that a bit later on.
Yeah.
He was a marksman. He was that much in demand that the French wanted him. He wanted him. And he was also a great tactician, a wonderful tactician. So they were saying, well, is he safe? Now, he had two mates who went to grammar school with him in York, and they were the Wright brothers, Thomas and Christopher Wright. So they said he's a great fella. We can't trust him. And there was someone else who said he's a great soldier. Because back in France, they wanted him. The French were surrounded. The sea was at the back of them because, they were having a war with Holland. They were at war with them. And the Dutch, they more or less surrounded them, and they had nowhere to go because behind them was the sea. Now, don't forget as well that Shakespeare came out, it's a great line, and it expands to today. A battle can be won, or a battle is won in a day. A battle is won in a day. Because our night, when it went all dark, we used to say, we'll see you tomorrow. And if the other side said, yeah, all right, see you tomorrow. And if the other side, when they woke up at dawn and looked over and the other side was gone, that side has won the battle.
Yeah.
So battles are won and lost in a day. That's how Shakespeare put it up. And he was so right, because that's how they were won and lost in a day. So what he did, they knew that they weren't going anywhere, the Dutch, because they had them right where they wanted them, with the sea behind them. So they had nowhere to go. And do you know what Guido Fawkes said? It was brilliant what he did. He said, okay, lads, he said, seeing that We can't go anywhere. We can't go that way. We can't go that way. We can't go that way. And certainly we can't go this way, to the sea. So what he did, he dug a tunnel. He dug a tunnel right underneath the Dutch army. And he came out at the back, obviously with a load of soldiers as well. So when, the next morning, and the Dutch were shouting, "Get up, you lazy bastards." And the French were there. And they went, "Yeah, all right." And behind them, the Dutch went, "Who's lazy bastards?" The French were. So they were surrounded. That's how good Guido Fawkes was. And no one knows about it.
Yeah.
No one knows about it. And that's what he did. So, I'm going to have a swig of water. So.
Okay, I will join you. We'll drink to Mr. Fawkes.
Mr. Fawkes, yeah. Guido Fawkes. Guido. I'll just say hello to some of the lads and girls, I think, if there's girls on. Simon. Morning, Franco, and all in the chat. I've got to put my glasses on, sorry. I don't like wearing me reading glasses. They're heavy. Very heavy. Anyway, morning, Franco, and all in the chat. Hope you're all well. Looks like we're in for a scorcher this week. Thanks again for last night's show with Jamie. Thank you for joining us and great comments you were putting up. And he carries on. I was watching earlier a podcast of yours with John McCardle. Would love to see if you could bring a nostalgia figure back to compliment Anthony each week. Just a thought. Appreciate it. It can be difficult. No, we were going to have John on, and again. And what has happened? I think I felt sick. I was ill, so we couldn't do it. Then he was out filming somewhere, as these actors do. I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll get a fella on by the name of Daniel Taylor. He's a cracking fella. But we will get someone on. We'll get someone who you know, instead of just me and Anthony. We'll do that, Atlee?
Whatever you like, Frank, I'm with you.
Do you know I'd love to get on Joe and talk about the 60s and the Mersey BT? I wonder if he'd come on.
I'll try and talk to him.
Would you?
Yeah. You know what? It was in my mind yesterday. Yesterday I got a WhatsApp from Davy the Pap saying, looks like Castle Galleries in town is closing down. So I think yesterday, whatever date, the 11th or the 12th, don't know what date we're on today. So I did a recce on my phone to see that date, and there's a photo of Joe and Davey up from 2018 when the Lennon went to the Liverpool.
And Joe, that wasn't even Dave the Pap, but he won't come on. I know that he won't come on, and the actual pictures he's taken of people is incredible. And what a stories he could tell us.
Yeah.
So I think that's what Simon wants, someone like that.
Yeah.
Rather than us two old codgers. That's what he's saying, to be honest.
Yeah. That's the old two codgers.
And he carries on by saying, if you get a chance in a future show, the Welsh Scousers, Welsh Streets, and the influence of Welsh architect Richard Owens and Little Wales. I've read a bit of very interesting. He's read a bit, but very interesting. Well, they lived around their community, believe it or not, was around Pall Mall, here in the city centre, and they couldn't speak English. They were pure Welsh, and they couldn't make heads or tails, excuse the pun, out of the English money. So they, in fact, printed their own Welsh money during the 1840s. Incredible.
And didn't he build their own church as well, Frank?
Oh. Well, as you know, the Welsh Cathedral.
Yeah.
The Welsh Cathedral. And look at it today. I don't want to talk about it because it really makes me angry. I'll talk about it one day because it's not for now. You know what I mean, Anthony.
Yeah.
Bella Italia. Buonasera, Franco e amici. Buonasera. Bella, buonasera. Freedom's here. Good evening, Frank and chatters. Oh. Evening, Freedom. That's what we could do with some bloody Freedom. Johan. Good evening, Frank, and legends in the chat. Hope you're all well.
Lovely. Good.
George Shett, the lad from Belfast. Good evening, Frank. This is my favourite programme, History. It's so educational and entertaining. Are we entertainers?
Yeah.
Entertainers. When I do history, though, you know, and I do some controversial stuff, and you know the controversial stuff that I do. I come under a lot of criticism. I might come under criticism with this, to be honest. But thank you anyway, George. Really appreciate that. Lynn Ellis, evening, Frank and Anthony. Hope you're loving this. Yes. I was in the doctor's, as I said, Lynn, and I couldn't wait to get home to sit out with the flies and the bees and the wasps, spiders, flying ants, you name them. I was sitting with them. They're all my mates. I'll be out there tomorrow again, sitting. But anyway, Johan, would it have anything to do with the Federal Reserve, Frank? Very good. Yes, it is. You know what he's talking about, Trump?
For tomorrow?
Yes. Get in there. Toscana. I sent you a letter. Not a letter, a message. Anyway, that was last night. Ciao, Franco. Ciao, everyone. I hope you're all having the best day possible. It's a breath of fresh air coming on here and learning from Franco and all yourselves.
Brilliant.
Thank you, Toscana. Yeah. Really appreciate it. Their son's training to be a pilot. Pilot. Be great, that, wouldn't it? Airline pilot, commercial as well. Do you know what? Do you know when I get this thing on me? My eyebrows itchy. Would you believe it? My eyelids get itchy. This is itchy here now. But you know when I'm in bed? It's terrible, you know. I was dropping asleep once. Well, loads of times it happens. And you just go like that. And you know the way you're dropping off? Then all of a sudden I get this mad itch. Scratching it. Oh. I should have been a cat. Oh, Lee Brady. Hello, Frank. How are you doing? Love that photo of Liverpool Castle. Tell you what I'll do with you, Lee. I'll get you a copy made. How about that? A print. I think your kids would be made up with it. Just hang it on the wall. I've got a canvas. Is that taken from the canvas? Not quite so sure. But I have a canvas of the castle hanging on my wall. I think I sent you that, Lee, didn't I? But I'll get a copy. I'll definitely get a copy when Anthony and that comes over for me, because we're going to go out, aren't we, one day? You know, just to sit down and that. Yeah. I'll go to a Prince's and get it done for you. How's that, Lee? I'll get it done for you. And he carries on. How far is the replica of the castle? I'd love to go. Oh, do you mean it's not far. It's not far. I used to bring my students up there, and it's well worth a visit, especially in weather like this. It's well worth a visit, and it's in Horwich, right, Bolton it is, Bolton. And it's on the banks of the reservoir. That's another story, though.
Yeah.
And why it's been put there, the replica castle. And do you know what? Someone's on it had a big plaque, you know. And it was big. And it said, "This is the replica of Liverpool Castle built by Lord Leverton." And someone took it down. I think it was their count. Oh, we can't be having that. We don't want Liverpool mentioned it. I really believe that. So it's not far, Lee. And if I was fit enough, I'd go with you and say, yeah, this way. Show you. George. Hello, Anthony. Hope you're well.
Hiya, George. I am. Thank you. I hope you are too.
And
good weather.
Hi, Anthony. Bella to tell you.
Hiya, Bella. Good evening.
Lee Brazy. Hello, Tony. Hope you're well.
Thanks, Lee. And you too.
And Bella to tell you. Buonasera. Isn't that lovely? To Toscana. Yeah. No, Toscana to Bella. Did I see? Josephine. Josephine. I hope you haven't left us. Yeah, she will. Well, she'll be on a yacht now, traveling around the marina in Los Angeles, Hollywood. So he wanted me to go over there.
You'll have to get over there, sort them out.
Get rid of the wokes. Toscana. Good evening, Anthony. Hope you're well.
I am. Thank you, Toscana. I mean, brilliant company, lovely weather, fab.
You just can't get away from it, can you? And Johan, good evening, international artist, Mr. Brown.
Johan, very kind, and good evening to you, sir.
And Josephine Whittaker. Hi, guys. Hi, Joe.
Hey, Joe.
Oh.
I hope all's good with you.
Yeah, because you know what happened, don't you?
Yeah.
You know what happened. But I think she's all right now. She's all right. And George says, I love historical subjects and watched a program on YouTube about the Anderton boat lift from the River Weaver to the Mersey Canal. What a construction.
Yeah.
Great engineering.
Yeah.
I love engineering. Tell you what, George, you've got to look at the Mersey Tunnel, and it's been voted the top 6 in the world entrances.
Yeah.
Our Mersey Tunnel.
Yeah.
Jill Pullman. Even in Frank, even in Jill. Lovely to see you. Carry that. Evening girl, says Jill. Lovely.
Evening, Jill.
And Callum. Trump got caught saying he bombed Russia and China, and yeah, he did. It's on audio, isn't it? He got the tapes and he'd actually said it. There's no way he'd bombed Russia. No way. And he'd no way that he'd bombed China either. Yeah, Anthony. Hey, Anthony, is that an original Van Gogh? Yeah, it is original. Everything's original about him.
It's original, but it's not a Vincent one. It's my.
It's an Anthony Brown one.
Yeah, I wanted one on my wall since I was a little child, and I thought, well, there's no way I'm gonna get the original, so I'll do my own, and that's kind of Frank's way.
I think that's it. You know, how many artists have done that? You know, looking at a famous artist and loving one picture.
Do you know what, Frank? It is such an education to do it. And the problem is that we're now living in an age of copy and paste. So, the art students aren't doing anything original that I can see. And then you get many artists who copy something and put it in a gallery, which is not the way. Art is like literature, and like history is you study it your own way and you put it out as your own way. We've all got our different voices. Not every artist should be the same, and that's the problem. Someone sees someone else is making 50 quid, so I'll copy that and I'll put it out. And I hate that. In music, in everything. But I did the Vincent for an education, and it's kind of like going back to school, starting again.
I think that's great. I really do, because I know that you love Vincent van Gogh.
Yeah,
I really do.
Do.
And the Red Bear. Hello, Frankie boy. Hello, Mr. Brown.
Hello, Red Bear. Hope you're good.
I'll finish on this one. I'll get back to the gunpowder.
Yeah.
So Marx was correct, says George. Religion is the opium of the people. I would be more of a Bolshevik atheist. You've got to look at. I'd love to do that, you know, because at some point, and just bring it in. Because when you look at Russia today, even right through the Soviet Union time, the Cold War, and I'm talking about proper Bolsheviks, you know, right through. I always remember, I don't know, I really don't, and he said, I can imagine all, because nothing was coming out of Russia, was it really? Nothing, no film, nothing, no information during the Cold War.
Yeah.
And they said, I bet you those people have knocked down all the churches, and they're a very religious country. It's one of the top Christian countries in the world. And look at all the churches that are there. They're stunning. Absolutely all over Russia.
Yeah.
Stunning, beautiful churches. Well, right, so I'm going to go back to this now. I'm going to go back. I hope you don't mind, people. But I will go to your questions and your comments. I really will. So what has happened with all this Reformation going on, and the lead up. Now, who I have to bring into this conversation was people who were involved in a coup. They wanted a bloodless coup, so it wasn't going to be a sort of a coup d'etat. It was just going to be a bloodless coup. Excuse me. And that bloodless coup was going to be led by the Earl of Essex. Now, the Earl of Essex was a handsome man, but what he wanted more importantly was power. And he was always trying to court Elizabeth. And to the contrary of what you believe, what you've read, and, this is the problem with, people with good intentions, like historians going back and, they're looking at things and they go, oh, yeah, that must be right. I'm putting it down. I'm going back in history. So you're getting really the wrong information. So you have the likes of the Earl of Essex, who was a power-hungry man. Everyone had power. That's why land was being confiscated. It was just being confiscated all the time. Because they were given heavy fines. Say like you were a leading Catholic, Anthony. And I was a protester, but I was in the court of Robert Cecil, for example, and Elizabethan courtier. Now, if I think that you had good land, I'd say, give it. Has he paid his fine yet? Has he sent his kids to Protestant services? And they say, no. I'll just send a group of lads down to where you live, take everything out with value. Now, don't forget, back in the day, you had paintings, you've been talking about paintings, you're an artist yourself, and they had fine pictures of animals, of family members, done by very famous painters, very famous artists. So they were taken because they're of value. Animals were taken. Crops were taken. And when they had nothing else to, pay the fines, heavy fines, the lands was confiscated. Not confiscated as such, just like the slave trade. When the Irish were sent over in slavery. But they were what you call indentured. And they were given a shilling a year. So they weren't slaves. They were on a wage. And a little plot of land after so many years. He said, yeah, that's yours, for your services. So they weren't really slaves, but they were slaves.
Yeah.
It was just hypocritical. They were slaves. They were put into slave labor, the Irish. So it was like that. And these people couldn't find the money now. They were borrowing off relatives. Until they just said, we can't give you it anymore. So they lost the land. The church lost their land. The church lost their land. Even the people who worked on the land, and not just the church, but also the people like who you employed on your land, they used to go up to them and go, would you be a protester? And if they said, yeah, they were all right. But if they said no, they were castigated, sometimes put to death. This was the rough and the brutality of the Reformation. This was what it was all about. This is what it was all about. So you get people who were very, very annoyed. One particular person was named Robert Catesby. And Catesby, he was married, he had a son, he had two sons. One died when he was in his infancy, and his wife died also. And he just loved his wife. He just loved his wife. Now, he had his land taken away from him because of heavy fines. Now, these people they were devout Catholics. It was their religion. And all because of the strength of the protesters against Rome. Against Rome, you couldn't really fight against them. You just couldn't. You just had to be obedient.
Yeah. Some
people just went over to France. You couldn't go over to Ireland because that was in turmoil.
Yeah.
Because their culture was turning upside down. The language, everything. And it goes back to today with the likes of Zelensky. I'm sorry, I'm trying to give a great example of how history hasn't changed. Because Zelensky has shut down all Russian culture, including the churches, desecrated the Russian Orthodox Church and imprisoned priests and parishioners. That's what it's like. And, you know, the press don't print all this. They just don't print it. And they didn't do it then either. They just didn't do it at all. Back in the day. Yet it was so full of propaganda. With the likes of Robert Cecil. Walsingham first. Then Cecil's dad. He took over Walsingham when he snuffed it. Then when he went, Robert took over.
Yeah.
And he was the worst still. It's just like Biden was bad. He was awful, that president. He started the war. There's no two ways about it. And when Trump came in, I'm going to stop it within 24 hours, he's fucking carrying on with it. Escalating it. Anyway. And it was just like that because Robert Cecil was escalating. Because he wanted to get rid of every Catholic.
Yeah.
And it goes right up to Cromwell times when he wanted to commit genocide in Ireland.
Yeah.
So it doesn't stop. It just doesn't stop any time. No matter what you look through history, there's always something. And we can go back to William Blake.
Yeah.
As the hapless soldier sighs, as blood runs down palace walls, and the blackening church appalls. Powerful words.
Yeah.
By a man who looks at religion, who looks at the state, and he looks at the hapless soldier.
Yeah.
So you see, it's just a continuation of everything. But you get the continuation of propaganda. Everybody uses propaganda, you know, for the sake of us, for the sake of you and me and everybody else, all the chat on there. Simply because we want to believe. But you've got to, as I've always said, even in lectures, I've given lectures when I was teaching, you've got to break down, you've got to get through all this propaganda, misinformation, disinformation, and as you know, it just turns out it's a lies. And once you break that down, there's the truth right there, facing it. And that goes with conspiracy theories.
In modern years, isn't it? Is media coverage, newspapers, magazines, television, that would pump out a script which we're all invited to believe.
Yeah.
And know what the script is right. I mean, it was happening in the 20s, in the 30s, in the 40s.
Well, do you know, you just mentioned the 20s and the 30s. You know, like, for example, in Chicago, during the 20s, during Prohibition, it was shocking, you know, the Wall Street crashing, people were out of work. There's loads of things. There was a knock-on effect with that Prohibition, big knock-on effect. And people don't realise it because it put farmers out of work. It put people, printers, believe it or not, bottle makers, crate makers, vehicles, drivers.
Yeah.
It put loads of singers, entertainers, barmen. Everything went. A massive knock-on effect, and no one realises that. No one realises it. And yet, do you know, as a step, I should have just said it right away instead of carrying on like a lunatic. Do you know what Alphonse Capone, Al Capone, right? You must have seen film footage when you've been looking at things like that. Just footage, that's all. No pictures, you know, like in the cinema or anything. And you just see pictures in a documentary or whatever, and you see like people queuing up for soup. Do you know who provided the soup? The soup kitchens. Who provided them? Al Capone. The government wouldn't help. So you see, it goes back to Mary Bamber.
Yeah.
Giving out soup, giving out tea, giving out bread. It's our own who provide the poor.
Yeah.
Now, getting back to the plotters, everyone has a grief against the government and against Robert Cecil. And they were saying, this fella's evil. This fella's not giving anything away. He wants to get rid of us. Give you an example. I'm sorry about examples. You've got the 1620 and the founding fathers, and they were exiled to Holland, but the Dutch got fed up with them. They said, "Getting out of our country, you lot." So they went back to England, went to Plymouth, because the government said, and these are Catholics, by the way. They said, "Listen, do you want to go somewhere?" And there was also Puritans, because during the Reformation there was offshoots of religions.
Yeah.
It wasn't just Catholics. It just wasn't Catholicism. So they went, "Yeah, we want to go anywhere. We go." They said, "Well, you're going to the New World. Do you want to go?" They just said, "Yeah," because they were homeless. They never had a country. They were being persecuted in this country, so you go away to get away from it all. And they went to America. And they were going to Virginia. That's where they were sailing to, but they were blown off course, ended up at Cape Cod. And they were the founding fathers. That's another bloody story as well. Mad, you can talk about everything, and there's all, you put dots and you can connect the dots all through history. You really can. Right through history. So you have these plotters now. Now Essex, I have to go back to Essex. the Earl of Essex. Now, one thing you've got to understand, there's an old saying, isn't it? You know, keep your enemy close. Keep your enemy close.
Keep your friends close and your enemies closer.
Exactly. So, Monteagle was a spy for Robert Cecil. And he was the cousin of Sir Francis Tresham. Who's he? Oh, he's a plotter. He was a plotter. And he said, anything, let me know. Anything at all, he said to Monteagle, you know, Cecil. So he said, okay, I'll have a word with Sir Francis. So he said, okay. So anyway, these plotters were all there. Now, what you have to understand is that a Catholic could not hold a weapon. He couldn't hold a weapon, own a weapon. And this is very important. So he had no chance of holding a weapon. He had no chance of a horse. Couldn't get anywhere. They had to live in a 5-mile radius of where they were living. Now I'm talking about these people who had money, Catholics, and they couldn't really do anything. One of them was Sir Everard Digby. Sir Everard Digby. And he was a great horseman. Now, as I said about that particular 5-mile radius, do you think anyone went outside that 5-mile radius, Anthony? Now, don't forget, if you went outside that 5-mile radius, you faced certain death.
I think they probably did in just in the way of life. You know, you can't sustain your life in your front garden.
So how would you get out of that 5-mile radius? Would you walk?
Probably horse. Then, yeah, horseback.
Oh, now don't forget you're banned. You're banned. Right? You're banned from owning a horse, a weapon, or anything.
Okay.
Now is where the intrigue comes in. Because what you had, all these people, these plotters, lived all over the place. Do you know who was involved in the gunpowder plot? But as a plotter, by the way, but they couldn't prove it. Right here in Liverpool. And do you know who it was? The Earl, the Stanleys. The Stanleys of Liverpool. I'll tell you a bit about it later on. So now you've got all these plots. So how would they gather them? How the hell did they get hold of Guido Fawkes? How did they get hold of it? Now you had a fellow by the name of one of the plotters. One of the White brothers. So you have the likes of, I'll give you all the names of them. I'll give you all the names. You had Robert Catesby, John Wright, Christopher Wright, Thomas Winter, Robert Winter, Thomas Percy, very important, Thomas Percy, Guido Fawkes, Robert Keyes, Thomas Bates, John Grant, Ambrose Rookwood, Sir Everard Digby, and Sir Francis Tresham. They were all the conspirators. They were the conspirators. They were known as the traitors, the dirty, stinking traitors of the king, against the king. Against the king. Get back to Essex. Now, Essex, he found out about Elizabeth, what I was talking about the other night.
Yeah.
And he says, and Robert Cecil got to find out, and he found out through Lord Monteagle.
Yeah.
And he went, oh, did he? Yeah. So we sent him over to Ireland. He said, that'll fucking see him. He'll be over there now. Because he really couldn't do anything to the Earl of Essex. Couldn't really do anything, the proof and whatever. But he needed proof to do anything. Cecil. So anyway, he was over in Ireland. And Essex said, this is ridiculous. What am I doing here in Ireland? What am I doing here? So anyway, he had these friends. And these friends said, why don't we go over there, have a coup, throw the fella off the throne, as is Elizabeth, and just say it's a big sham. You've been living a sham, and point the finger at the dead Walsingham, at the dead Cecil, and the living Cecil, Robert Cecil. Point the finger at them and make them suffer the way they're making everybody else suffer.
Yeah.
So they had a good idea. Monteagle was there. Sir Francis Tresham told him. He said, fucking hell, they're going to go and take Elizabeth off the throne, which will be a good thing. That's what Tresham said, be a good thing. What did Monteagle do? He went back and told the other fella. And he said, listen, he said, they're going to have a coup, a bloodless coup. What are you going to do about it? He said, oh, okay, that's all that I need. That's the proof. That's the proof in the pudding. And they waited for them, arrested them, put them in the tower, put Essex in the tower, the leader of the plotters, the coup agitators, as they called them. And he was beheaded. Couldn't do it otherwise. But there's the proof that he was going to lead a coup against the Queen of England. And he went in there in 1600, executed in 1601. But during those, about the coup, you had other fellas there. Other fellas who became plotters. They became plotters. So it never just stemmed. As soon as she died in 1603, she died. And she was like, no autopsy on her. But she died of poisoning. Within herself, no one poisoned her or anything. So there was no autopsy, there was nothing like that. I've never seen a doctor in her life They weren't allowed to look at it. Weren't allowed to have an autopsy. So you've got to ask yourself why. You know what I mean? I've done all that the other night. So now Cecil, he thought, I'm all right here now. I'm all right. I'll just concentrate on getting rid of these lot, you know, the rest of these Catholics, or, you know, make them into the Church of England, I'll just say. But it wasn't working out like that. And Monteagle, I wonder if Jason is, I should have looked for it today. I wonder, is Jason home? I wonder if he is.
He's home to join us at half time. But he did, yeah, well, yeah, he's just put me up, so he might be with us now.
Jason, please. I'm not adding this to the stage. Let's just see if you've done it. Start. Yes. Thanks, Jason. Thanks, Jason. Oh, it's great, Jason. It was the letter. I had to have the letter.
The band is back together.
The band is back. The big reunion. So anyway, they started gathering people in. And as I mentioned before about Guido Fawkes, can we trust this fella? Yeah, we can. What about this young fella, Everard Digby? Can we? Yeah. But they had a leader. And that was Thomas Percy. Now, Thomas Percy was the grandson of the Duke of Northumberland. So he couldn't do nothing to him unless they had proof of treachery. So Thomas Percy, but he was a leader. Now, when the Queen died, the first in line really was the Duke of Norfolk, but they were Catholic, keep him the fucking way. So they said to James the VI of Scotland, he said, do you want to be king? He went, yeah. Because when his mother, Mary Queen of Scots, was executed with the signature from Elizabeth, he went down to Elizabeth and congratulated her. I don't like saying her. Congratulated Elizabeth on the death of his mother, on the death, the execution of his own mother, because all as he wanted, James the VI of Scotland, was power. Everybody craved power. Everybody craves power today. Everybody. Can I have a quick break?
Yeah.
I wonder if our Jason's there.
This is St John's Gardens, but why isn't it called St George's Gardens? After all, this is St George's Hall. The answer is simple. What stood here since 1771 was St John's Church. And don't forget, St George's Hall wasn't built until 1854. Take a look at this. This is an actual picture of St John's Church being demolished in 1898. Sadly, there are not many pictures left of it. There's a great urban myth surrounding the hall, and the myth is that the hall was built back to front. But how can the hall be built back to front when St John's Church is already established in place? And also, what do you associate with the church? A cemetery. It's as simple as that. So why would the architect, Harvey Lonsdale Elms, have a steps plateau coming into a cemetery? The hall was not built back to front because Lime Street Station, that was there in 1836, and only the rich people could afford to get on the trains, came out to Lime Street Station and seen this wonderful building with its steps and plateau. The myth, unfortunately, continues with the death of its architect, Harvey Lonsdale Elms. He was supposed to have committed suicide when he returned 12 years later and seen the hall built back to front. It's a load of nonsense, and it's been fabricated over the years. Unfortunately, he did die 7 years before the completion of the hall in Jamaica, where he was sent by his physicians to recover from a common disease, tuberculosis. There are other myths within this vicinity. So let's go over and have a look at Nelson. Nelson. We're on the steps of the Whale Museum, William Brown Street. And did I say a moment or two ago that this was Nelson? In fact, it's an easy mistake to make. Actually, it's the Duke of Wellington. And people often ask why he doesn't overlook the city. Well, he's actually facing Waterloo as the crow flies, his most famous victory in 1815. You'll like this. He's not made from bronze or marble or stone. He's made from the French cannons captured at Waterloo. No, it's not there neither. It's very hard to find these things. Well, it's not here. Let's see. Yeah, there it is here. Because when you go in there, down there, there's a spiral staircase that leads right to the top. You open up the doors and you clean the monument itself and the Duke. Where shall we go next? From a huge monument to a much smaller one in Rodney Street, and there's some story behind that one. This is Rodney Street, the home of William Mackenzie. Did he live in one of these fantastic Georgian buildings? No. The myth is, he's in a pyramid. This is John Foster's St Andrew's Church, which unfortunately has seen better days. The myth surrounds William Mackenzie, a Scottish railway contractor who was an avid gambler. His ambition was to have a royal flush, the highest hand you can have in poker. Mackenzie said if he never fulfilled his ambition in life, he surely wanted to fulfill it in death. His will stipulated his instructions very, very well, right down to the finest detail, that he should be sitting at a chair with a bottle of scotch, holding a royal flush in his hand. So if he never fulfills it in life, he surely would fulfill it in death. So is it just a myth that Mackenzie is in the pyramid, or is it fact? I'd like to think that he is sitting in the pyramid with his glass of scotch, holding his royal flush? I really like to think so.
How about that?
Fantastic. Way to go.
Mackenzie, pub named after him now. I just want to tell the ladies and gents here, before I carry on with the gunpowder plot. Anthony and I were talking the other night. We had an in-depth chat. Went on for a few hours, didn't it?
We did, yeah. Yeah.
And it's only what Anthony said before as well. You know, there's different paths. But in history, by the way. And when you look at a book, it's full of history. And people don't realize this. It's like from Shakespeare. Shakespeare just didn't write about, you know, all these, shall I compare thee to a summer's day. He wrote about histories. He wrote about what was going on. And then when you leap forward, you've got, I mentioned Blake as the hapless soldier sighs as blood runs down palace walls and the blackening church appalls. He was brought up for sedition for that. They could have hanged him. They could have hanged him for treachery because he dared bring in the establishment, especially the church. So this is what you have. This is what you have. You have history within literature. And I was mentioning about a certain Charles Dickens. And Charles Dickens loved coming up to Liverpool. He just loved it. And he used to go to Molly Bushell's. He used to just, whatever way he went to the shop in Everton. And he used to buy these mints. Now, these mints, unfortunately, I don't know the doctor's name, because he went to Molly's and he said, any chance of this medicine, it's very bitter, but I'd like to give it to the patients. And she said, yeah. So she made a mint. She covered the medicine in mint. It's just like today, isn't it? When you took medicine and sometimes you had to have a drink or a sweet or something because it was that bitter. I remember it as a kid. So he went there. And what he used to do, he used to get these mints and eat them. And he sat in Everton, where the monument is, you know, that you see on the Everton crest, the lock-up. And he used to sit there, not on there, you know, but at a bench. And he used to look down into Liverpool. And in his book, Hard Times, he wrote a chapter called Keynote. And I hope you don't mind, I'm going to read just this couple of paragraphs. Because what he's doing, he's actually describing Liverpool. He's describing Liverpool and the Liverpool Leeds Canal, because he could see it from there, from where he was sitting, looking down. Because don't forget, it was the highest point in the city centre, still is today. The highest point you look down. So I hope you don't mind, and I'll go right back to, because I've got a question for you afterwards, after I read this. And it's just a straightforward question. It's not a hard question, it's just a yes or no. You know what I mean? I'm not going to ask a question about this, right? So anyway, this is Charles Dickens, and his fifth chapter is Coketown. Coketown. to which Messrs. Bounderby and Gradgrind now walked, was a triumph of fact. It had no greater taint of fancy in it than Mrs. Gradgrind herself. Let us strike the keynote, Coketown, before pursuing our tune. Excuse me. It was a town of red brick, or of brick that would have been red if the smoke and ashes that allowed it. But as matters stood, it was a town of unnatural red and black, like that of a face of a savage, painted face of a savage. It was a town of machinery and tall chimneys, out of which interminable serpents of smoke trailed themselves for ever and ever and never got uncoiled. It had a black canal in it, and a river that ran purple with ill-smelling dye, and vast piles of building full of windows that was rattling and trembling all day long, and where the piston of the steam engine worked monotonously up and down like the head of an elephant in a state of melancholy madness. It contained several large streets, all very like one another, and many small streets, still more like one another, inhabited by people equally like one another, who all went in and out at the same hours, with the same sounds upon the same pavements, to do the same work, and to whom every day was the same as yesterday, and tomorrow, and every year the counterpart of the last and the next. And there it is there. God bless it. I was hard reading that because it's very small print. Even got me glasses on. Thanks, Jason. Sorry there, mate.
Yeah.
And there it is. It contains several large streets, all very like one another, and many small streets, still more like one another, inhabited by people equally like one another, who all went in and out at the same hours, with the same sound upon the same pavements, to do the same work, and to whom every day was the same as yesterday, and tomorrow, and every year the counterpart of the last and the next. Isn't that brilliant? He described Liverpool.
Yeah, and the era of industrial workforce.
All the same, because his mate is one of my ancestors, believe it or not, the historian Thomas Carlyle.
Yeah.
He came out with the very first word, automation. And that's how he, in the sign of the times, that he dedicated it to Charles Dickens.
Yeah.
Automation. It's like robots. And
Yes.
this is how, rather than use automation, this is how Dickens described it. But it's not just Dickens, it's not just Shakespeare, it's not just Blake, it's everybody. All literature. It's absolutely fascinating, and it gives you an insight into history. It's the path of history, and it's all enveloped into one.
Yeah.
It really is. Now, here's our question. How would you like to do? It's not a class, it's not anything. How would you like? I do history, along with this great man, this great friend of mine. How would you like to do a literature pod? And we'll talk like, we're not reading books or anything. Most probably you've read them all. But to go into, the likes of that, it's just so simple. The likes of our time. What does it mean? See what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's history. It's the history of Liverpool. This is the way it was. This is the River Mersey. This is the Liverpool Leeds Canal he's talking about.
Yeah.
And the monotonous of the people. Because when he says about serpents and elephants in it, it's a human jungle. That's what he's saying. It's a human jungle with no way out. Only feet first. So if you'd like, but you've got to let us know if you'd like that. We'd be talking literature. Not telling you to read poems. I'm not telling we won't be telling you to read books or anything, but we'll be picking things. The likes of Jules Verne, the likes of H.G. Wells,
George Orwell,
of course.
No.
All these visionaries.
Yes.
And great poets. The likes of William Blake,
Yeah.
the likes of John Keats, the likes of Robert Browning. Because just we can't forget the ladies, the Brontes. We can't forget one of the great poets, Elizabeth Barrett Browning. Incredible. We talk about that. Not the poem as itself, the likes of Aurora Leigh. This little girl who lived in Italy with her parents. Her dad was English. And the parents died. And she was left on her own. So her auntie sent for her from Italy, 11 years of age. When she went to school, her auntie put her in school. She knew more than the teacher. So it gives you this sort of divide from education and the working classes.
Yeah.
Simple as that. There's loads of things like that in literature.
Yeah.
You've only got to look at Jane Eyre, my favourite novel. Believe it or not, it's not one of them. I love Dickens, lovers novels. But when you read Jane Eyre, incredible.
Yeah.
What they wanted to do, and it's what they want to do.
Yeah.
Dickens, Shakespeare, Blake, Keats, Browning,
Mary Shelley, who has got an incredible backstory to get them.
Exactly. And she has. Brilliant. But so if you want it, just let us know. If not, that's fine if you don't want it. Honestly, that's fine. It won't take over history, by the way. History's always, we're doing that all the time. But if you want that, just let us know. If that's okay with you. Okay. Yeah, look, Jason. And this is where, if you look, the workhouse. And look at it. So grand. And that was a big wall going around it, by the way. You couldn't, around here, look. Right around there. You could see that there's parts of the wall still there, by the way. So, if you want it, please let me know and we'll do it. Anyway, getting back to this. Now, what you had another thing. It's like any of us on chat coming along with me and Anthony and saying, I tell you what, let's go and rob a jet with a nuclear bomb and let's bomb Parliament. Sounds simple, doesn't it? I'm trying to give you a comparison, not an analogy, a comparison, an example. Because back in the day, you couldn't even hold a sword or a dagger. You couldn't hold it. That's a weapon. It was like a weapon of mass destruction in the eyes of. So what you had, there's no chance of you getting hold of any gunpowder. No chance whatsoever. No chance. And the most fortified building in the country was none other than Parliament. When they used to congregate and they used to, the king came along and shouted at them and, excuse me, whatever happened in Parliament. Because he was the head of state. The king was the head of state. So, with the likes of Essex gone, they started to mumble and grumble and whatever. Remember the 5-mile radius?
Yeah.
When they were going to each other's houses. Thomas Winter, he came over to Lord Stanton. He said, listen, he said, he said, look, he said, my advice to you, he said, go over to Spain, see the king there, and just say, listen, you've got to emancipate the Catholics. They've got to, they have to, practice their religion. You mean no harm, just let them practice it. You can't go around killing priests. You just can't do it. It's wrong. It's murder. So he said, just go over and do it. So anyway, he went over. So hang on a minute. He's gone from Liverpool, from Yorkshire to Liverpool, from York. Why wasn't he pulled up? You've got to ask the question. And he was allowed to get on a ship and sail to Spain and back again. Nothing happened because, the king said, no chance. They're going to do nothing. You just have to carry on. Protest. That's what the king said, the king of Spain. So we told the lads, and Montego was always this. Now I'm going to read you the letter. I forgot my glasses on, yeah. I'm going to read the letter. Cracking letter, this. And this was sent, excuse me. Now don't forget, no one knew about Lord Monteagle. No one knew about him.
Yeah.
No one. So a letter was written and sent to him. Right? And this is it. This is broken down because it was in Old English. I'm just about to read it properly. But anyway, this is the Monteagle letter. My lord, out of the love I bear to some of your friends, I have a care of your preservation. Therefore, I will advise you as you tender your life to devise some excuse to shift off your attendance at this Parliament. For God and man have concurred to punish the wickedness of this time. And think not slightly of this advertisement, but retire yourself into your country where you may expect the event in safety. For though there will be no appearance of any stir. Yet I say, they shall receive a terrible blow, this Parliament, and yet they shall not see who hates them. This council is not to be condemned, because it may do you good and can do you no harm, for the danger is past as soon as you have burned the letter. And I hope God will give you the grace to make good use of it, to whose holy protection I commend you. Now that letter doesn't contain a date.
No.
It's just this Parliament and a terrible blow.
Yeah.
That's all it contains. A terrible blow. It doesn't contain the most important word that should have been used is gunpowder. We know that someone's going to blow up Parliament with gunpowder. So why isn't that mentioned? But I'll explain that later on. So bear that letter in mind. Nothing about date, nothing about anything.
Yeah.
Nothing. Absolutely zilch. So who wrote it? I'll get back to that later on. I'll get back to that later on. And this was to the plotters. All to the plotters. And who are the plotters? Read the names out. Have a look at this. And there they are. They're all there. Now, one thing you've got is Thomas Bates. Now, he's a servant. And there were 13 in the plotters. You've got to go back to the day. You're talking Shakespeare's time. You're talking of all these great writers, Christopher Marlowe, Cyril Taylor, all these great writers. And yet, you've got the likes of these people here with a servant, because they needed 13. And they said, well, we can't, let's have 13. Because at the time, Shakespeare, just mentioned those great writers, always wrote about evil, a wood, and evil. Also, the number 13.
Yeah.
So they had to make 13, and they couldn't find another gentleman quickly enough. So they got hold of Robert Catesby's servant and named him Thomas Bates. He would have never have allowed that. Never have allowed that at all. A servant. So, getting back to the letter. Right? Getting back to this letter, which was unbelievable. Unbelievable. Because how did it get in Monteagle's house? Now, Monteagle goes home. It was raining. And don't forget, in those days as well, there's no electricity or anything. They had little mad lamps. And everybody went to bed early for the next day. Now, this is winter. And it goes dark at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. So it's dead of winter. And it goes dark. So rather than sitting up by candlelight, they just used to go to bed. Used to just go to bed. Someone's drew me. I'll show you that. Someone's drew me. Anyway. So he comes home, Lord Monteagle. Now he's got a servant. And a servant went, would you like some wine, sir? Before I go to bed, and I'll put the horse away. And he said, no, leave the horse. And the servant said, but it's raining, I'll bring it to the stable. And he said, no, leave it. You go to bed later on when I tell you to go to bed. So he said, okay. So he brought him a wine. And the next was on the store. Was that good sound effects there, Anthony?
That was absolutely perfect.
That's brilliant. I think I'll leave it now then. You know, the sound effects is that. So anyway, what is that? He shouts to say, he said, get open the door. So we said, okay. Goes to the door, opens it, and he said, my lord, there's someone here with a letter for you. Now, no matter what period of time it is, no matter what periods of time it is, if there's a letter for you, what do? You open it, don't you?
Yeah.
And you read it.
Yeah.
You read it. Yeah, Monteagle says, open the letter to the city. He said, are you sure? He said, open the letter. And I want you to read it to me. And he read out the letter so that he could say one or two things. Say, don't go to that parliament. But he didn't, because he never had a fucking clue what it was said, what it meant. And he said, is my horse ready? He said, yes. He said, I never unsaddled it. You didn't want it unsaddled. He said, I'm going down to the Privy Council with this letter immediately. Right?
Yeah.
So we folded the letter back up, put it in a bag, jumped on his horse and got up. Now then, before then, a couple of, sorry about that. Excuse me. Before then, a couple of days before then, Anthony, Robert Cecil went around every single Privy Councillor, every single one of them, and said, I want you in the Privy Council. I want you in the Privy Council in 2 days' time. Because the Privy Council, only a couple of people ever turns up once in a blue moon to do some business. That was all. But he wanted every Privy Councillor in them chambers. So they were all umming and ahhing. He said, I want you all there. And then they were all sitting around. They said, well, what are we sitting here for? So it was coming in tonight now. And they're all sitting there. Then all of a sudden, who barges in? Was Monteagle. I said, my lord, he says, I have read this letter. And he read it out. He read it out. Cecil. And he said, "Do you see? They want to blow up Parliament." That's what he was saying. It's the traitors again. It's the plotters. I want them rounded up. So anyway, they rounded them up. Every single one of them. Now then, can I ask you, Anthony, how was, to your knowledge, how was Guido Fawkes caught? How was he caught? Do you remember?
According to our what we were taught from schools and from TV, was he was caught in the cellars of Parliament with God knows how many barrels of gunpowder and a match. There you go.
Absolutely spot on. Absolutely spot on, because while he was there, he was in the cellars with a lamp and a torch. A lamp and a torch, a flame torch. Okay. Remember when I said that Parliament was the most fortified building in the whole of the country?
Yeah.
Soldiers. Even soldiers who had a little pouch of gunpowder had to give it back to the sergeant in arms when he was going off duty. Said that's how valuable. You couldn't get hold of gunpowder.
Yeah.
Right? You couldn't get hold of them. So the next performance, what you've got, is that the gunpowder itself, how did it get in to Parliament? Now, who was the tunnel man we mentioned before? Guy Fawkes.
Mr. Fawkes.
Yeah, simple as that, isn't it? The tunnel man. Now, these lads, they're said to get lodgings in an inn, coincidentally facing Parliament. Again, what they said, that he dug down and went through to the underneath of Parliament, which was a load of absolute garbage.
Yeah.
So how did they get the gunpowder in? Imagine the most fortified building, the most outlaw of all materials was gunpowder. The only people who could have gunpowder was really the armed forces or proper gentlemen, wealthy gentlemen of the elite. And they only had enough for a pistol. So now what you have? You have this tunnel. Because no one would believe if they said that it came through Parliament. Could you imagine fellas carrying gunpowder on the shoulder because it was heavily fought? Exactly. Got the earring. Where are you going with that? Oh, I'm going into the cellars. What for? Why are you going into the cellars with that? See what I mean? No one will believe it. It's too far-fetched. Yes. However, the tunnel isn't as far-fetched. But what gives it away is, if you're digging a tunnel, say this was you're taking a tunnel from an inn, say where my name is, along here, what would you hit? You'd hit this massive, thick brick wall. How are you going to get through that in a matter of hours? It's impossible.
Yeah.
It's impossible. Because they had no pneumatic drills then. There wasn't like drilling through. So it was impossible. But they had to make the story up.
Yeah.
You just had to make the story up that they dug a tunnel. And what about the letter? And this is just to round them up because, and there's the crux of it, 5 of the plotters, including Catesby, was in Ireland with Essex and the coup. So they knew about these people. They found out who they were.
Yeah.
And they said, we have to get them. We have to round them up somehow. We have to. Now then, that's the image that everyone has got of Charles Dickens. It's the image everybody has got. And all that gunpowder. All that gunpowder. Look at it all. It's the equivalent of 2 ton, 36 barrels of gunpowder, the equivalent of 2 ton. It was impossible for them to bring it there. Impossible.
Propaganda.
Oh, well, they had to do something. They had to do something. And there's luck, which was, do you know a soldier of fortune? Tell you what he does. One of the great ones, besides Guido there, one of the great ones was a fellow by the name of John Smith. John Smith, he's a hero, believe it or not, when he went over to America to feed the first Virginians.
Yeah.
And he told them to stay, being yourself. An Englishman. And there's another story, but John Smith was a powerful soldier. He was actually captured in the Middle East by the Arabs, and he was put to slavery until he escaped. He was a great soldier of fortune, like him.
Yeah.
Like him, Guido. So Guido was a master of the sword. A master of the sword. What would he have done if he would have seen those beefeaters?
He'd have probably taken all of them on.
He would have done, because even if he would have been killed, he would have died as a soldier. That's what they do. They die as soldiers. And he would have died as a martyr as well.
Yeah.
But they couldn't have that, could they? So they said that they arrested him in the cellars with his gunpowder, with a torch, to kill the king and blow up Parliament and all the parliamentarians. However, they did have a little bit of gunpowder, because that gave the great idea to Cecil. It gave him the great idea, because Monteagle said, what they're going to do, I found out, they've got a small amount of gunpowder, that you could fit in the palm of your hand. And they're going to put it in a brick, and they're going to make a bang. Which it would. The unfortunate thing, as they were bringing it, it was raining. It was heavy rain, real heavy rain, and the gunpowder got wet. So 7 of them, they were in Holbeach, a place called Holbeach. And I've been there. I did a documentary for this company. I was on the telly and I actually went to Holbeach, the house. And the bullet holes are still there. Because Cecil said, see, what it was, Holbeach was in a wood. What did they say about Shakespeare and his contemporaries about woods? The light never penetrates, it's evil. It's evil. You've only got to read The Crucible. Arthur Miller's The Crucible.
Yeah.
About the little black girl dancing in the wood. And they thought she's a witch, she's evil. You see? And that's the way it was.
Yeah.
That's the way it was.
Yeah.
So you have now Holbeach, a place of evil, where evil plans are afoot and planned to blow up the king, to kill the king and all the good parliamentarians. So this was all coming out. And they said, well, what about Holbeach? He said, great. Because Cecil said, get up there, have a few survive, but I need 2 people dead. I need them dead. And that was Robert Catesby, yeah, and Thomas Percy. I need them dead, because Percy was the leader at one time. And when he went to see the king, he said, listen, you've got to, we've got to bring our priest back. And he told him to fuck off. He said, you're not having them back home, shut up. So they found him weak. He never argued the case. So Robert Catesby, he became the leader because he was a strong man. He fought them. He even had fisticuffs with them. He was in someone's house, and all these pursuivants, what they were called, pursuivants, they came to empty the house, beat this occupier up, and he took them all on and beat them up. Robert Catesby was a big, hard man, and an angry man, because of, sorry, go
on. An intelligent man.
Oh, very, very intelligent.
So therefore a threat on all levels.
Yeah, as they all were. So what they did was, they said, they sent a troop up, and they told them to come out. I was actually putting my finger in the, the musket shell, balls, the ball bearings that was going. Oh, fantastic, couldn't believe it. Me, there. Anyway, they killed Catesby, and they killed Percy as well. Thomas Percy. They killed him. They killed him. Because they didn't want them in the court where they were, because He had them all. He said, we're going to put these on trial and show an example. And show an example. Excuse me, I just had a message for Francine. So you have all this hype, all this propaganda about Guido Fawkes being found in the cellar with all this gunpowder and the torch going to blow everyone up. And yes, he would have took everyone on, as you said. He would have done. He would have died. If he would have died, he would have died a hero. That's how they lived, those fellas, in those days. So the next performance is when you look at these things and this propaganda. And Francine, sending me the messages. She knows it must be known that I'm doing a pod unless she thinks I've finished. So all this propaganda, especially about Guido Fawkes, especially about the tunnel and everything, and the letter being sent down, brought by Lord Monteagle to the Privy Council with no date, with no gunpowder, with no nothing really. So you have them all rounded up. Every single one of them on trial. The ones that were alive, by the way. They were all sentenced to death. Lord Monteagle, Robert Cecil, when he was going around for confessions, he weren't confessing. He was putting them under torture. He was putting them on the rack, which was a terrible torture. All your bones and muscles stretched and out of joint, everything. So you can imagine the agony that those men were going through. And that's for the confession. That's for the confession. A confession to nothing.
Yeah.
Guy Fawkes was arrested 3 days later after this supposed incident, and he was in a pub. That was a load of nonsense about that. But they had to have propaganda. They had to have images. And this is what was coming out about these plotters. That's what was coming out. Then he was put on trial. And when you see the transcript of the trial, again, that's a load of nonsense. Because they're all saying, yes, my lord, I'm sorry for the injury I caused Parliament, for the injury I caused the King, for the injury I caused the good men of Parliament, and all this nonsense. A load of garbage. Because the only scribe that was allowed in, like the confessions, no one else could take confessions, was Robert Cecil.
The script writer.
The only one, but there was only one person in there, and that was Shakespeare. Shakespeare was a Catholic sympathiser. He was also, his mother was a Catholic. His mother was Catholic. And then they were all hanged, drawn, and quartered. When they were found guilty, I think the trial began on the 6th of January. Found guilty, they were taken away to the place of execution, and they were taken on a board facing down. No one was up like this, looking skywards. That's heavenwards. They were looking downwards to hell, and they were being dragged through the streets. And when Shakespeare wrote Macbeth the same year, and in Macbeth's tragedy speech, he comes out in part of it and says, "And all our yesterdays have lighted fools the way to dusty death. Out, brief candle, life is but a walking shadow. A poor player that struts and frets his hour upon the stage and is heard no more. It is a tale told by an idiot, full of sound and fury, signifying nothing." Now, where it says in all our yesterdays, that's history. All our yesterdays. Yesterday was history for me and you anyway. When we had the phone call, that was history. That was the other day. Part of our history. Have lighted fools. All our yesterdays have lighted fools the way to dusty death. Remember when I said they weren't allowed to look heavenwards? They were just laid on a board, and the dust coming up from the hooves of the horse dragging them through on the way to dusty death. Out, brief candle, that's your life. That's a candle. When you go, blow it out, that's it, that's your life over. Life is but a walking shadow. Who was he talking about there? He was talking about Monteagle, staying in the shadows, listening to everything, going back to Cecil, telling him everything. A poor player that struts and frets his hour upon the stage and is heard no more. That's the witnesses. Not the witnesses, they're the defendants.
Yeah.
They'd be saying, I had fuck all to do with this. What's the matter with you? I had nothing at all to do with this. But Cecil was writing down, "Yes, my lord, I am sorry for the injury I may have caused the good king." This is what they were. You see what I mean?
Absolutely.
It is a tale, which means a story. A tale is a story. It's nothing else. It's a story.
Not truth.
It is a tale told by an idiot, full of sound and fury, signifying nothing. Who's the idiot? It's full of sound and fury. Get these tiger, what the hell? Cecil. It's Cecil. Signifying, full of sound and fury, because he hated them. He wanted everyone out. Because he felt under threat for the land he got, his father got. They wanted to keep on with the protest. That's why you had the likes of Bloody Mary and her nickname Bloody Mary, because she was manipulated into giving people debts, the acts. Hence Bloody Mary. I've got to fucking answer this, I'm sorry. So that was that. That was that. So who wrote the letter?
Cecil.
Yes.
It sounds like he was the scriptwriter for it all.
Oh, yeah. Total scriptwriter. He wrote the letter. And why he didn't mention gunpowder, it would have involved it. Really. Because that now exonerated the government's involvement. And Sir Francis Tresham, because, the cousin of Monteagle said, our kids here, boy. He said, well, all right. He said, no problem. He said, I'll put him in jail for a few weeks. Don't forget. He'll be all right, he said. He'll be all right. He'll be well looked after. He'll be well fed. No problem. He'll be in safekeeping. Why? No one will do any harm to him. So Cecil had him put in like a cell to be looked after for, as he said, a few weeks in case other plotters who knew about this thing, who we don't know about, will go after Francis Tresham and kill him. Oh, well, how would they fucking know about Monteagle? That's what I mean. No one knew about Monteagle. And being, they knew that Monteagle was the cousin of Tresham, Sir Francis Tresham. So his life was spared from being hanged, drawn, and quartered. One of the most horrific deaths you could face, because you died slowly. Did you cut off an arm first, from the shoulder on? From the shoulder, your arm gone. Then a leg from the groin. And as you were bleeding out, they had a bonfire. Bon meaning good, a good fire burning. And they cut the belly open. And they pulled out the innards and threw them on the fire and turned their faces towards the fire. I'm talking about the likes of Guy Fawkes and Everard Digby and the likes of those lads. They turned their heads so that they could see their body part burning on this bonfire. So, when it says about Cecil finding out about this little bang that they were going to make, he made it a big one because it was a government subplot. The gunpowder plot was a government subplot to blame these plotters. And that's how evil people are.
Yeah.
And it's been going on for centuries.
Absolutely.
Centuries. So what did you think of that?
You know what, Frank? I think your delivery is so powerful, and it leaves me absolutely shaking because as a Catholic and brought up a Catholic, at some point there's got to have been some opposition to bonfire night, where we all assume that Fawkes is the baddie, and he's not. You know, wow! It's like.
Well, I used to. Do you know when I gave a lecture about this?
Yeah.
I used to say right at the end, and I used to say, "Is there any Catholics in here?" And hands go up like that. I said, "Well, every bonfire night, with you setting fireworks off and all enjoying yourselves and throwing poor Guy Fawkes on the bonfire." I said you were celebrating the death of Catholicism.
Yeah.
And they were. But then, you know, it's all eased off then. That became just a tradition. Now, there's the original letter there. That's the original letter written.
Yeah.
And yet he had the servant to read it.
Again, it's witness, isn't it?
Now, look at that to the torture. You've got Guido Fawkes at the top, right? That's a signature. But after the torture, look.
If he even wrote the second one.
Yeah, it's terrible. Just awful what they did.
And he still do it in the name of king and country and.
Yeah. Yep. So we'll just see what these have said. If they've said anything, that is. Love that Simon, look. He's talking to George said, aim at heaven and you will get earth thrown in. Aim at earth and you get neither. C.S. Lewis. Those the quotes, does Christopher. Hi, Frank and Anthony and Jason and everyone. Like and subscribe, please.
Thank you, Christopher.
Toscana. Oh, please talk about the 1960s and Merseybeat. If I could go back in time, it would be in that era. There you go. That's when we were talking about bringing Joe in.
Yeah, Joe, yeah.
Merseybeat. Seems like Guido stole Guy pulled a mole man technique on them. He did actually. He did. Joseph Williamson.
Yeah.
He certainly did, Johan. And Simon, Franco, come on, bit harsh. I love you and Anthony, both legends. I just someone to come on with you guys would be a good crack. We'll get someone on. I want this fella on, but he won't come on. David Owens. And that's at the Rivington Reservoir. He's one of the, he just looks everything up. Does our David? Love him. Barry Aldridge, even if Frank and everyone, hope you're all well. Bella Italia, couldn't wish for anything better than tonight with Anthony and Franco. So whether you've enjoyed it, because I just don't know.
I think so.
And Frank and Anthony, what are your thoughts that Shakespeare's Macbeth was highly influenced by the gunpowder plot while also subtly flattering James I? Just putting it out there. So there you go. There you go.
I think that was what I was saying before about how history and literature and all of that becomes one.
Combines.
Yeah.
combined.
Because the thing that blew me away when I first heard about it was that there was a thing called the King's Book, and I think it was Cecil or his father who said if they're writing up the notes of something that's gone on, he'd say to someone, put it in the King's Book, which is a big ledger. So therefore, historically, this is what happened, even though it was complete nonsense. Once it was in that book, any historians following who needed information go to the King's Book, which was full of lies and untruths. And
yeah, simple as that.
Yeah.
You've only got to look at the Warren report about JFK.
Yeah.
Loads of nonsense. You've only got to look at Trump.
Yes.
48 hours ago, there's no such thing as the Epstein files. Well, do you know Ghislaine's, Maxwell's lawyers, they've gone like that?
Yeah.
She's in jail for nothing then. What's she in jail for? If there was no files?
If there was nothing to answer, yeah.
Procurement, this is what she's in jail for, got 20 years for procurement. So if there was no clients, there was none. And she's gone to jail for nothing. And she could sue, if she gets out, she could sue for millions.
Yeah.
Johan draws parallels to today. The maniacs just attacked the only all-Christian village in the West Bank today. Johan, you've got Jelani. He's president. The Americans have made him president. Trump has gone, what a great man. He chopped heads off for ISIS. He's the leader of ISIS. He's killing now Christians as we speak. He's executing, dragging them out and executing them. And Trump as well. I'll be talking about that tomorrow night, to be honest. Simon, Al Capone's favourite hotel suite in Miami was used in the Only Fools and Horses 1981 episode Miami Twice, where the episode was recorded. David Jason considered Al Capone a more violent Del Boy. He was a businessman. He was a businessman.
Yep. And you only got him on tax evasion.
And do you know who got him that? I tell you, he was the, he couldn't get him. Now, what has happened? Lucky Luciano, right? He said to Capone, he sent over, I forget who he sent over. And Neil Lansky was with him. Oh, who was it? I forget his name. And he went to Chicago and he said, listen, join the 5 families. He said, you have your business here. There's no problem with that. You won't be touched by anybody. We'll see to that. You'll make your millions, but you've got to put into the kitty. You just create kitty. And he went, fuck off, I'm not doing that. This is my business. And you can tell your families that. So he said, okay. So they needed him out the way. So they got Mayor Lansky. He says, how can we get him? And he went through things. And they went to the Elliot Ness. There's a fella named Purvis. He was better than Ness, by the way. Fella, I always forget his first name, but his name was Purvis. He had a funny name, first name. But his name was Purvis, nevertheless, FBI. Well better than Elliot Ness. Elliot Ness was a phony. And he said, yeah, get him under tax evasion. And they were, why didn't we think of that? So it was Meyer Lansky. And he got out the way. Then they went to Frank Nitti, who took over while Capone was in jail. And they went to Frank Nitti. He was the enforcer, and he became leader. And they said, listen, join the Five Families. He's in jail now. We can't fucking do anything. Watch it. And he went, no. So they said, okay. And two fellas waited for him. He grabbed him, brought him down to the subway and threw him under the fucking train. Frank Nitti went under the train. Redbeard, the Russian population in Ukraine were banned speaking their own language outside their homes. Yes. Thank you, Redbeard. Jill, careful. MI6 is always watching, Frank. My maiden name was Stanley. Wasn't me, honest. She's lovely, Jill. Lovely girl. My maiden name. And that's the facts, Johan. Facts. Where's the facts? The actor Kit Harington is a direct descendant of Robert. I go one better than that. I actually, when I did the gunpowder plot, I had two ancestors. One, no, I didn't. Descendants. I had two descendants. You just have to take them up. That's with the ancestors. I had two descendants. I had a girl named Miranda. And Miranda was the descendant of Robert Catesby. And I always forget that the other person was a fella. And he invited me down to his home. And he lived in Gloucester. And he lived in, it was part of a castle. You know, the other part was destroyed. And so he lived in a part of a castle. And he said, I have Henry VIII's bed in that part of the castle. He said, you can sleep on it if you want. Come down and visit me. I forget his name. And he was the descendant of Sir Everard Digby. So I had better than Kit Harington.
Yeah.
And they believed what I've just told you because they had all the proof as well.
Yeah.
That it was a government subplot.
Yeah.
Interesting. Says the Red Bear to Simon. Let's see if you say anything. Simon, when I glanced at your chat, I thought you said sis because he calls him sir. I'm not confused about my gender. Stevie Mulholland. Hi, Frank. I visit the world. Yeah. Western approaches. Go away. The first sign, you should be ashamed of yourself. Great to see some information about the Soviet Union, but this information on history is being denied, isn't it? Of course it is. Of course it is. It always has been. And now you're wanting their mates to go to war. Haven't they learned the lesson? That Russia, they're fucking lunatic. They're all fucking Nazis, every one of them, the Nazis. Look at that mate, you've only got to put in an SS officer's uniform. He's horrible, him. Kaya Kallas, another Nazi, you know, her grandparents. And this one now is going to become a head of state, head of MI6. Her granddad was known as the Butcher of Ukraine. SS.
Jesus.
It's crazy. Von der Leyen, another one. Fucking lunatics, horrible people, Nazis. Viscount Cranborne, previous leader of the House of Lords, is a direct descendant of Robert Cecil. Ironic, the spilling of blood significantly shapes history. Absolutely. Let's shout that. I went to, where did I go? Oh, I always forget this brat's name. I was actually, when we were filming, I actually went on the estate. Massive estate. Massive, big stately home. Lord Montague, his house. And I went in it.
Yeah.
And he's a direct descendant. I think it was Cecil as well. And that's the land that they were taking off people. Montague. That land belonged to Catholics during this Reformation. What we're talking about. They would never have owned that land. Was absolutely love it, says Johan. About time we had the FC book club. How about that?
Brilliant. Well,
Ali Danus, Ali's Romania, great fella. Ali, if you're still with us, the lads who come to fix my Wi-Fi and internet.
yeah.
Romanian, Alan spoke about you. And when I mentioned about Kalen Georgescu and Simeone, he went, do you know about them? No one knows. I said, I do. He was delighted. The Redbird, do it. Yeah. There you go. Simon hasn't said anything, has he? A truth that's told with bad I was going to say internet. Sorry. A truth that's told with bad intent beats all the lies you can invent. William Blake. God blimey, the internet going back to 1794. Jesus. The Red Some people forget to like. Don't be one of them. Thanks, Reds. Are lovely. Thank you, Redbird. Frank, it's incredible. I think of 36 barrels of gunpowder in the cellar under Parliament without getting a gunpowder Parliament. Yeah. Bella, it was impossible. Honestly. Impossible. Meant to say, yeah, of course, that's what I said before. It was impossible. And it was impossible to do a tunnel. That was all propaganda. Well, how are they going to get in then? Oh, I think we're taking a tunnel from this in. Got to the in people and says, you better fucking say that they stayed here and started taking tunnels. Okay, yeah, all right. Sorry, Franco and Anthony, my English is not great, especially when I'm trying to write things. Bella, I tell you, please don't worry. We know what you say.
Yeah.
And when I haven't got my glasses on, it comes out English. I'm trying to read. No problem, Bella, you're doing great, mate, says the Redbird. They are saying.
Yeah.
Thank you, she says to the Redbird. I love these people, you know. Is a possible conspiracy that the establishment knew the location of the gunpowder compromised the keg, so it was never going to succeed? The yeomen of the guard still conduct a ceremonial search today. That's all it is, a ceremonial search. So you're right, Simon. That's a good shout, actually. But it's like everything else, like tradition. That's why we have a bonfire every year. Now, to be honest, if you were a Catholic and you wrote to the government saying that it's offensive against Catholicism, it offends. Think about it. That's all I'm saying. It offends. I'm not going into detail. Do you think they'd stop it? But if it offends other people, they would stop it immediately.
Yes. Yeah.
Lee Brady. Cheers, Frank. Would love a copy of printer. I'll definitely get. Honestly, when I meet Anthony, we'll find a printers. We'll have to text you my address, and I'll pop over my address. Yeah. Yeah, of course. Of course. And I'll hand it over to you. The print. Hang on, someone's at the door.
If it's Cecil, don't let him in.
Sorry, Frank and Anthony, I have to go out. It's been so interesting, thank you, says Jill Pullman.
Oh, thank you, Jill.
Billy Dutton. Hello, Frankie. My granddad died at the junction of the Albert. He was a tugman. He did a 24-hour shift and his mate was ill. He'd done a shift for him 48 hours straight. Dropped dead, walk, Jesus. Oh, blimey, 48 hours. And he carries on. My dad was 8 when his dad died, helping his friends. Hats off to all those men in the past. They worked so hard, not apart from what we think a hard day is now. Total respect. Billy Dutton's drawn me. Show you. He's drawn me, hasn't he? Look at that. Lovely. That's what he had here. Thank you so much, Billy. Thank you. Really. That's what Francine sent me through. Johan, when the monarchy hatched the plot, occupied Catholics will blow up the attic. And just like that, history was bought. Isn't that fantastic?
Brilliant.
Isn't that fantastic? Johan, a desperate disease requires a dangerous remedy. Guido Guy Fawkes. It's great sound, isn't it?
Yeah.
So where did Guy Fawkes say, well, that peed on the bonfire? Christopher. Do you know what? It was shocking, like the deaths and what has happened to the bodies. And it was like Cromwell, when he died, what the ordinary people did, they dug him up, desecrated his body, cut his head off, spiked it, and put it on Traitors' Gate. Not many people know that about Cromwell. That's how much he was loved. Ellie, nothing changed there. No,
Nope.
no, nothing at all. You won't forget Ghislaine jokes on Jeffrey Epstein. Apparently, he killed himself. Yes. And there was never a case against him, according to the FBI and the Department of Justice. What a loser. Their lawyers will be right on that. Ghislaine.
Yeah.
She was definitely a scapegoat, by the way. Definitely a scapegoat. They're factual, interesting, very educational, and brilliant. That's all down to our Frank. 100%. Thank you. Thank you. Really appreciate it. And Billy says, Frank, do you think history and time yeah, it does repeat itself. That's why I give examples as I was going through tonight, Billy. Just repeating itself constantly. How does it make you feel? It makes me feel terrible. That's why I can give examples. I can go back to the Roman times. You know, who's the greatest woman leader that everybody reads about in the Roman period in this country?
Boadicea.
And it wasn't.
But she wasn't the greatest, was she?
No.
She's the one history gives us.
All the time. And we can go leap right forward. You know, I think about Queen Carter Mandua.
Yeah.
Great queen, better than her, well better. Because she wanted to look after their people, not fucking have them being slaughtered by the Romans. That's the way I look at it. Yeah. And we can leap forward. And one of the greatest women of the 20th century. You know, we all, don't get me wrong, I'm not having anything against Emmeline Pankhurst and the suffrage girls. Yeah. They went through a lot. Not unlike, you know. But there's a girl there who never gets mentioned. And that's one of our own. And that's Mary Bamber.
Yeah.
She was a suffrage. Never gets mentioned.
Yeah.
So, you know, there are people like Queen Carter Mandua, like, excuse me. Yeah, there's something, Anthony. You might know it and you might know it. Do you know Jack the Ripper? Right?
Yeah.
We all heard about him. There was a novel written. Do you know the way you're talking about literature, right, before? And you get a seed, you know, in your head from history, and you want to write about it. Say, like, let's pick something out of say, like, I wanted to write, and you're in collaboration about UFOs, because they're always in the news, aren't they? You know, people talk, oh, look at the photograph and whatever. So you and I could write a book about UFOs. You see what I mean? A story, a fictional story.
Yeah.
But about UFOs. And you know, it's a fictional story based on, honestly. And it's based on Jack the Ripper, right? The first one ever written. And it was a girl. It was a woman. In 1913, she wrote a novel called The Lodger. and it was a woman. Forget her name. I forget her name, unfortunately. Just came to me then, you know. So we do things like that, talking about. How did Van der Leyen get off with that today? And that cheeky Macron lecturing about Brexit. Franco can't wait until it's fuming about these bureaucrats. Total disgrace, absolutely. Absolutely, Simon. A truth that's told with bad yeah, you lads. They're taking the piss now, aren't they? Look, look. The truth that's told with bad internet gets lost while the stream is buffered. Oh, cracker that, Johan. Cracker. Simon says, I thought it would be a good idea to go into politics. Maybe I'm a little too old. But, you know, I'd love to be Chancellor of the Exchequer. That's why I'll be united with my money.
Ken, yeah.
He was our friend, wasn't
he? Yeah, absolutely.
He was our friend. Sick Ken. Frankie, what's the greatest memories in history for you that makes you smile? I'd have to get back on that. I'd have to. It depends on it make you smile. If you go like that, well, it's the likes of propaganda. It's the likes of putting someone in the forefront and go, what a great man or a great woman. And I just go, oh yeah, that makes me smile. When they're fucking not. Mine is Jane Austen. Sorry, Simon. When I was doing literature, honestly, and I had to do it once. I was doing all the hard stuff, and all of a sudden I came across Pride and Prejudice, Emmet, and Darcy. I just thought, no. There was the Napoleonic Wars going on and death of them. Well, she was writing all about a little conclave of friends. Wasn't for me, unfortunately, Simon. There's a film called Rewrite with Hugh Grant and Marissa Tomei. Try and get it. You know, you'd enjoy that because there's a principal in it, college or university. He was a massive fan of Jane Austen. And she even has the Jane Austen like mugs and them. I think you'd enjoy it for that. Those who cannot remember the past are condemned to repeat it. George Sutton, yeah. That's right. There's loads like that. It's like let me think. Try and think of one which is very similar to that. Patriotism, right, is in the hands of the vicious. Patriotism is in the hands of the vicious, which it is. We're patriotic, but we don't want to start wars. We'd rather just sit back and go, go on holiday to their countries, not start fucking wars with them. Simon, know your happiness, want for nothing but patience, or give it a more fascinating name. Call it hope, Jane Austen. There you go. And Jane. Michael Woods does exceptional history. I don't know. I don't know the lad. I don't know, Frankie. Who was your role model when you were younger? Who was my role model? I was about 8 or 9, and he used to run along to the library, and I used to read up on great people, but they were all military, funny enough. But the great role model today, I love literature. I can't pick an historian out, unfortunately. I could pick Tacitus, if that's any good, the Roman writer, but he was in the period of Rome. He was writing about the great Roman generals and whatever, emperors. I love Marcus Aurelius and another lad by the name of Vespasian, 2 great emperors. But a role model is Dickens.
Yeah.
And Shakespeare. I can't.
Inspirational.
I can't pull them apart. But they're the prose writers.
Well, it kind of more educational to pick someone in the modern sphere who will, their inspirations will talk about them. So you kind of get you get involved in both. You as you talk, if we go back to a place, then there was only that history of that time. What I like is the concept of listening to someone more in the modern world who talks about different that and that and that and that. So if you like me listening to you in 150 years, Frank, if you're still doing it in 150 years, I'm your biggest fan.
You see, it's very hard when you get a role model. It's very hard to single one out.
Yeah, it is.
And you know, like Living, for example, you know, a Living role model. And there was a lecturer, Professor Pope, and to me, he was a great role model. One of the greatest people, I forget his name, who did the classics. I think I was talking to you about him. And I forget his name. And he was talking about Homer's Iliad. I love the classics. And he came in and I was going, wow. And he inspired me. He inspired me. He was talking about Cyclops.
Yeah.
He was talking about Jason. Now, I'd never fucking seen Jason in the Argonaut show when he was at school or whatever. And he was talking about it. Then all of a sudden he left after a few weeks. I was looking forward every week for him, you know, for that class, the classics.
Yeah.
So I got great inspiration from him. after just a few weeks of him being there.
That's the greatest education, isn't it? To be inspired, to take it further.
Yeah. And I always remember giving a talk at the concert room at St. George's Hall, and another great teacher who inspired me. And I couldn't believe that he was sitting there in the front with his wife. And I couldn't believe it. And that was Mr. String.
Proud.
I went, you know, because I was chock-a-block. He was right in the front. And there was a little kid there in an Everton shop. Never forget it. Little kid. And he was sitting there with his dad. And I went, that's what I'd love to see. That's what I love to see. Young kids taking an interest in history. And I asked the question to the, I said, are you his dad? He said, yeah. I said, did you drag him along? He said, no, he wanted to come to see you and the history. And I said, that's great, because I want the young to know about their city.
Yeah.
And Mr. Stinger was there. And when I seen him later on, I made sure that I seen him. And he said, that was beautiful, what you said. Not about not about the talk again, but about saying to that child. He said, because that was me when I was teaching you.
Yeah. Brilliant.
Billy Dutton say, Frankie, you really need to write some books for children. Fuck Mr. Tumble. Mr. Tumble. Guys, thanks for tonight. Interesting insight. Look forward to tomorrow. Damn, I had the Jane Austen mugs in the post. Oh, fantastic. He's lovely. They're all lovely. So what do you think tonight? What do you think, Anthony?
I loved it. You know, my thing is it's all about learning something. You know, never.
Do you know what? Do you know that particular quote? What Simon sent in by George Washington. To be prepared for war is one of the most effective means of preserving peace. Now, that is taken, as you said, very relevant to today's world, because what they're actually saying today is strength makes peace. And what they're talking about is war. Because what the EU are doing is putting out, you know, all these wonderful propaganda things about Mr. Putin and about Mr. Lavrov and about the Russian Federation. And as I said before, people think, oh, you're a Putin. No, I'm not. I just don't like wars. But if someone started a war, and while the others all sat back and said, well, let's go on now, because you've seen Boris Johnson, and he said, we don't want you to have peace. And that was at the Istanbul 2022 peace negotiations. And over 1 million Ukrainians have been killed because of that, because they wanted to get rid of Putin. They wanted to get into his country to steal everything because of all their natural resources there. And that's what that quote is. Yeah. The most effective means of preserving peace. And that's, we've got more fucking guns than you, and more bombs, and more planes, and more men.
Yeah.
That's what that means. It's sad now that people's influences are similar to theirs. In the world of likes and attention, I'm a youth worker, been doing it all my life. The role models for me are, as you say, inspiration, a little nod or an acceptance from people who you feel or think don't recognise you. My head teacher did that to me. Everyone feared him, but he was there for me. No words, just presence. That's why I do what I do now. Always remember. Of course, you've got, that's a cracking comment. You've got to remember.
Yeah.
Because if you don't remember anything, you know, you might as well give up. You really do. You've got to know the good people. You've got to know the good people of the fight, because we're all fight. Every one of us are fight.
Well, the magic word for me keeps coming up, and from Billy as well, and from you is taking inspiration, being inspired by someone to follow a path, do a thing, or stop, do a thing.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. It's so sad, really, when I love Oscar Wilde. I love Oscar Wilde.
Yeah.
And he came out with one of the greatest quotes about cruelty, believe it or not. And it was about blood sport. The unspeakable in pursuit of the uneatable. They were the fox hunters.
Yeah.
Well, the hounds, you know, just tore to pieces foxes. Johan, thank you, Frank, Anthony, Jason, and all the legends in chat who take time out to be with this brilliant community, contribute and educate. Great stream as usual, Frank. Love to all of you. Isn't that lovely?
Yeah, lovely. And back to you, Johan.
And he carries up. Putin puppet, same as Assad Todi, Gaddafi guerrilla. When are we going to talk about Milovsky, minions? That's Netanyahu. You know, people think, oh, he's born and everything else in Israel. He's an Israeli. Fucking isn't. He's a Pole. He's Polish. That's his name. Miller, whatever his name is. Billy, love you, boys. Thank you. Thank you. Simon says, Billy Sutton, well said, and thank you for your service, and everyone out there that doesn't get the gratitude they deserve, but unfortunately, that is the way of the world today. Karen, I'm finishing, darling. Good evening, everyone. Sorry to be so late. Oh, Karen, I'm finishing.
Good evening, Karen.
Honestly, I've been on over 3 hours. I didn't even realize. I'd just seen it there. Fantastic as usual night, Frank, Anthony, and Jason, and everyone up the history that's.
Thank you, Christopher.
It's great, Christopher. He always puts it up the heads. So anyway, Anthony, can I give you the ring?
Yeah.
After the show?
Of course.
Okay. I'll ring you right. I'll make a cup of tea first. Is that okay?
That's great. I will do.
Do you know what? Do you know this lady? I will listen to you later. Another one of those nights, sorting my brow out. Never mind, Karen. But you know what Karen does? Her husband's great, you know, Steve, and he just goes like that to her. You know, that. You know, one of those. You know what we do to Lainey?
Yeah.
Right? Because she goes in, gets the laptop, right, and she's sitting in bed with them watching us. I'll be listening to you later, because that's what she does. There you go. Brilliant. Shout out to Gap Painting Services, legendary sponsors of the show, says Johan.
Brilliant.
Lovely. And on that note, I'll have to mention them. Thank you, Johan. Thank you. And the sponsors of the show was Gap Painting Services. They always promote every show, every podcast I ever do. They're lovely lads, fully time served, fully insured. Don't struggle. Please get them in. If you're an elderly person, just get them in. Don't you dare struggle. You get a special discount. And also, if you're an NHS worker, get them in. Don't struggle. Don't struggle. Please don't struggle. And they're the sponsors of the Frank Carlyle show. Thank you so much, people. Thanks, Johan, for that. And Toscana. So it's the end of another great evening. Grazie, Franco and Anthony, for a wonderful, informative evening. I'm just sat here taking it all in. Buonanotte to you all. Buonanotte.
Thank you, Toscana.
Toscana. It's Toscana. I know you're coming to Liverpool. What I'm going to do, I'm going to send you my address if you want to pay a visit, because I'm always in. And if you're in Liverpool, and it's not far from the city centre, and it's easy to get to if you get a cab and just tell them, you know, the postcode. So I'll do that for you. Because she's coming to Liverpool next week.
Yeah.
Freedom. Good night, Frank, Anthony, and chatters.
Oh, good night, Freedom.
And on that, Anthony, thank you so much. Really, it's been great, mate. Thank you.
Thank you, Jason.
Yeah. I got to thank Jason. And anyway, I've got to thank, most importantly, besides Gap Painting Services, these people out here. Because without these people, there'd be no history show. There'd be no gunpowder plots or Jack the Rippers or whatever.
Be no plot.
But nothing. They just sit there twiddling our, I was going to say thumbs there. Do you know, I remember being up at my Uncle Tony's one. And, you know, he's passed on now, my Uncle Tony and Auntie Joan. And anyway, he had, you know, when his lads were little, not that big, right? And he came in, Paul his name is, and he came in with his little mate. And he went, he's here. Oh no, his little mate went, I've hurt me thumb. And I went, you've hurt your what? He said, me thumb. I said, oh, have you? And Paul went there, it's not a thumb, it's a tongue. You can't make these up, can you? It's not a thumb, it's a tongue. You know, kids love them. You can't say that now, can you? You know, you love kids. It's this fucking mo. It's just horrible. And do you ever remember Maurice Chevalier when he made that song, big massive hit for months? Thank heaven for little girls, grumpy girl every day. Can't say that now, can you? Because you're going on stage like that, going, thank heaven. Get 6 years. Anyway, on that mad note, Anthony, I'll give you the ring later on, okay? Thank you.
All right, Frank. Brilliant.
Thanks, everybody. Thank you. I'll see some of you tomorrow night.
Thank you.
Current affairs.